the traditions I honor a great deal, and they're very old. They're also very patriarchal in a way. And down here at the, or up here at the beginning of the 21st century, I'd like to suggest that a teacher has a certain obligation to a student to either take them the whole route or recognize that, or learn to recognize that they can't, or that this particular student is not one I'm going to be able to take along, and send them on their way, because what we hear are stories of students who stick around and didn't get the news from the teacher. And I just think that maybe it's not too much to ask teachers to have this moral responsibility. That either I can do it or I can't, and I can know the difference. Thank you.
Yeah, Sam.
Somehow, this comes back to what the lady was saying. The student-teacher relationship is not a one-way thing where the teacher has all the answers and the student is that's such a funny idea. That's again some idea of a way of viewing it, but it's just one way of viewing it, and it's actually quite possibly the wrong way to view it, because it still is a human situation of one human being and another. And it's true, as was pointed out, no one complains about teacher abuse. For example, teachers are abused continuously by tons of stupid students. But no one makes you never hear about that. Why? It's an interesting issue. Also, assuming that a teacher can take someone the whole way. What is the whole way? That assumes that there's some static point that one can be taken to. That's also a funny presupposition. And Hinduism, Buddhism, and within Hinduism and Buddhism and other religions, there are many different kinds of student-teacher relationships. In Judaism and Christianity as well, Islam as well. And you can't just take the idea of the popular idea of guru and just plant it everywhere. It's not the same in every situation. In fact, it's extremely different. And you were bringing up this team teaching idea. In the Buddhist tradition, the Vajrayana tradition, for example, even though which is very strong on the guru-disciple relationship. Even in that situation, the basic idea is it's not a personality situation, it's a lineage situation, and oftentimes you have to go elsewhere to receive the full teachings so that you don't fixate on the person. That's why there's lineage. That's why there's more than one teacher. That's why there are many teachers. It's so that one doesn't fixate on some idea. And of course, there are many stories about this, but even in the modern context, that in fact is true. Some teachers can take you a certain place, others take you to another place, etc., etc. But still, it's not static. No one said that Buddha's enlightenment is static, except those who would like to say that. It's not, Buddha didn't say it, and for the most part, Buddhists don't say that. So that's another view.
Also, there's the old saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And there's only so many students that are ready for the beginning levels of what we're talking about. So no matter how much you get to be better teachers, or you can present the material better, there's only going to be so many at the gate ready for it at that point in time, correct? So, to the extent that you can get better about getting the word out there,
yeah,
the student still has to be ready. And so the question is if you're doing it well or you aren't doing it well, will not the student, when is ready, appear?
Oh, one hopes. Always a difficult issue. And there's a shifting, isn't it? I mean, the whole thing of what's extraordinary about Dharma and spirituality in general is that it really does unfold. I mean, you look back 50,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, you would have some of the just early, very beginnings of shamanism, for example. As extraordinary as it was still a very early entree into spirituality. And it got infinitely more complex. You get the Axial Age, the great flourishing of the Upanishads. You get the extraordinary flowering of Greek Neoplatonic traditions. And then you get the first turning of the wheel, second turning of the wheel, third turning of the wheel. Far from actually going downhill, if you actually look at the history of spirituality, it gets extraordinarily richer and richer and richer. The number of people at any given time that can pick the highest fruits of that are always small. It's always less than 1/100th of 1%, east or west. And the thing that John brought up earlier is that there are these stages that human beings go through, again, not in any rigid sort of ladder kind of fashion, but the evidence is just overwhelming that we start and we grow and we evolve through these stages. And there's a religion for virtually every stage of development. And so even if you take Gene Gebser's simplified but really profound early model of this, from archaic to magic to mythic to rational to integral and then enlightened, so to speak, that's 70% of the world's population, again, is at mythic or lower. And so John's point was, by helping to understand some of these stages in a more integral context, then we're going to be able to help people that are ready for the transrational or transpersonal. And then when they are ready, the teacher will appear, and vice versa. But there are also teachers appearing for magic and mythic and so on. And so what we have to do is get just a little bit smarter about the types of spiritual engagements people have, not as a way of pigeonholing them, but as a way of skillful means of matching the right student with the right teacher at the right place and the right time. But the idea that there's just one thing called Dharma and one thing called the teacher of Dharma, and then you go to that teacher and you get the thing called Dharma, it's much more complex than that. So we're just trying to basically bring a little more sophisticated understanding on how to best match people with the right path at the right time and the right teachers. So it's not that we're necessarily changing the techniques, because there are different techniques that come to the fore with each of these stages of development. And you can even look at the 9 jhanas system in Nyingmapa, for example. And that's a very, very sophisticated unfolding from just the capacity to sort of count to 10 without losing track, all the way up to some of the most exquisite psycho-spiritual technologies ever devised. But those aren't for everybody. And the whole notion that they are is also a very sort of preconceived notion that sets you up for profound disappointment. So all of these things are part of what we're trying to look at in terms of how to take a little bit more integral overview, even when we can still argue the purity of a tradition. And so that's part of having a series of perspectives that allow us to think a little bit more sophisticated fashion about how to get this extraordinarily precious treasury of humankind into the modern and postmodern world in a way that is both effective, that differentiates itself from the earlier stages of spirituality, and therefore can actually make an impact where it's supposed to, and obviously in our own lives, but for those who are ready to hear that message.